Hey guys, what's up? It is week 306. I have some reviews for you, and I have the opening of my 1981 here. I posted it on my channel before, but you'll get to see it ahead of the 1981 movies this week. And I've been reaching out to guests and everything, possible guests for the 1981s. I'll make it more in depth this time. There'll be a lot more 1981 videos with guests and stuff like that. I've reached out to a bunch of people, and I think that I got some good guests lined up, and hopefully I'll get some more as well. I don't know when I'll start getting into those and everything, but probably within the next couple weeks, 3, 4, 5, maybe a month, who knows. But let's hop into these reviews, and the first one up is Jet Li, The Legend of Fong, Sai Yuk. This is part 1 I'm going to cover first. Now, this is, made in 1993, and both of them were made in 93 actually. So, okay, this one is another one from Ronin Flicks, and they put out another Jet Li double feature, which I enjoyed. So again, like I told you, I've seen a handful of Jet Li movies, some of the ones that came to America, but watching some of these, this one was really nice, kind of like seeing them in like the China films and the Chinese films and all that kind of stuff. So this one's a period piece, like a lot of these Chinese ones are. It's a golden harvest. So basically, Jet Li is like this badass fighter. He's a young kid. His father is very strict. His mother is kind of like free-spirited and fun, but also like the toughest person in the entire village. And Jet Li's always getting in trouble. Him and a couple of his friends are always not picking fights to anybody who does anything upsetting, or they basically fight them and always win. But what happens is at one point Jet Li starts to like kind of be interested in the government official's daughter, and that's kind of like this relationship that's kind of forbidden or whatever. But one day, to prove that he's the toughest guy in the village, there is this kind of this, I guess, a competition where it's this kind of giant wooden structure that's really high up in the air, and you basically have to fight not the emperor, but the government official's wife, who's like a super badass, and knock her off this, and then you get the chance to marry the daughter. So Jet Li decides to do it not because he wants to marry the daughter. He actually doesn't even really get a good look at her, just because he wants to prove himself. So he goes up there, and then when he gets a glimpse of the daughter, finally, he decides to drop out. But of course, there's a comedy of errors. It's not really the daughter. This one has a lot of like silliness and comedy in that kind of vein. But it complicates things, which is really cute in this movie, because the mother goes there and does it, but disguises herself as a man, and that causes all sorts of weird kind of love relationships and triangles and all these kind of things. Now the father is actually involved with like this secret, coup to try to overthrow, the emperor of China and everything like that. That brings in like a really horrible villain who's ruthless, and you see him in the opening just like dispose of all these like rebels or whatever. Throws one in the fire. It's really effective stuff. Good way to set up the villain. And by the time he comes back around, you almost have forgot about him. And then he's like, oh, he enters. You're like, oh, this is going to be trouble. He's definitely going to square up with Jet Li and the mother and all this kind of stuff. So it creates this kind of weird kind of family dynamic where eventually Jet Li has to marry this government official's daughter, but it turns out it was the girl he wanted after all. It's really cute. There's a lot of fighting, kind of like a weird kind of group of family kind of forming here. And at the end of it, I thought this one was really entertaining. There's a great moment. There's some really badass hero moments for Jet Li in this, where he walks down like a alleyway and just whoops everyone's ass, where he has like a bow with like 30 arrows on it. That kind of stuff is all in here. But there's a really good touching moment with his friend. So I thought this was really interesting. The special features, I can't remember. It's an interview with a stunt coordinator and the director, and they mentioned that this is actually kind of like a take on an ancient kind of Chinese character that was in film. Fong Sai Yuk. Sai Yuk? Would it be Sai Yuk or Sai Yuk? But so this character, they changed some things around. They made certain characters more likable or more villainous and all that kind of stuff. So this is like goes all the way back to old Chinese films in the black and white kind of era. So that's pretty interesting how they carry it on. And that's weird because Jet Li kind of was in the one kind of semi-remake of Bruce Lee's movie as well. So it seems like Jet Li is kind of like that next generation. This is like the passing of the torch in like the late 80s, early 90s for Jet Li, and that's really cool. And his stunts are good. I mean, his fighting's good. I don't know how much of the stunts he does himself, but probably quite a bit. He definitely is can do the martial arts on camera, and it looks always really good, and he's got a good presence about him. You can watch this is it Cantonese, I believe, Cantonese or English, yeah. And you can, the English dub is of course a little bit more ridiculous, but it is what it is. I enjoyed Legend of Fong Sai Yuk. I have trouble with that name, I'm sorry. But yeah, it looks good, it sounds good, and it's pretty entertaining. Good stuff. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Legend 2, aka the Legend of Fong Yuk 2. And this carries on right where the first one left off. Kind of we have this idea that, he's going to go on and train and join like the Rebel Alliance. So he goes there and he kind of enters in, and there's obviously some sort of weird power struggle going on. One of the characters there, he is made a villain. You can tell just by his demeanor, how he looks. This guy doesn't seem on the up and up almost immediately. So essentially, he starts to kind of think something's going on, and there is like kind of a coup, of course, right? And there's a traitor, and they're betraying them for the emperor. All this kind of stuff happens until, it's also a comedy of heirs with two wives in here now. So now Jet Li has two women fighting over him, getting jealous of each other, all that kind of stuff. Really fun moment. Now, again, this is a movie where like the mother comes back, and she's excellent in here. And there's points in this film where I was genuinely concerned for certain characters because in the first one they didn't really shy away from like killing a couple people that you truly cared about in the movie. So you're wondering if this kind of same thing could happen here, and this is the last one. There's not a sequel to carry on this, so you're like, they could really end some of the main characters here, and that would be pretty tragic. The mother is kind of like the highlight of the movie. She's really funny to me, and she's entertaining, and it's really nice to see these movies kind of like in the first one. They definitely had like a queer relationship in it, which was kind of strange. I wouldn't say homosexual, but queer relationship is how I think it would be defined. And it was interesting because 1993 Chinese film, not likely, right? Or maybe it's Hong Kong, maybe this one was filmed in Hong Kong, but still not really very easy to pass the censors and that kind of thing. And this one, they definitely have, a lot of badass female characters taking charge. And I like that too. Although in the first one, they do have the kind of very, disciplinary, like patriarchal figure. But that's just kind of how it was apparently, in these kind of films and everything like that. So, and this one, it seems like the women kind of take forward sense. There's more female characters in here that have more importance than males almost, besides Jet Li. But the main villain in here is great. He's really villainous. He's tough. The end fight scene is really cool. And as a classic trope, the hero gets injured in any Western or any, martial arts film. The hero gets injured or he loses badly, and now he must go away and train and rebuild himself and relearn how to fight to defeat the enemy. That's like the number one trope in Westerns and Kung Fu and Samurai, all these kind of movies like this. I enjoy it. If you like the genre, you will enjoy this one. So yeah, the second one, I would say, is just about as good as the first one, and you really like the characters that they bring back. So that's always a plus. Check these out if you've not seen them. Both are really fun. So good stuff. Okay, we're diving into the next title in the Lukas Moodysson collection, this big giant monstrosity here. And I don't mean monstrosity as an insult or anything. And the one we're covering here is Container. This is another one of Lucas's kind of artsy kind of experimental films, along with A Hole in the Heart. And this one's even more experimental, even more avant-garde. So basically what we have here is you can watch it in English or Swedish, and I imagine there's quite a different impact on both. But it's essentially just a black and white video footage with narration over the entire thing. And we definitely have kind of this character that is appears to be male, but sees himself as a female. And they talk about these kind of things and how they feel. And it starts to be almost delusions of grandeur, because they almost have, like, I would say, basically an image of themselves that's with them throughout the entire film. And then you see them, and then you have these moments where they're saying these things like, I'm beautiful, I went to Paris, and I spent $10,000 on just this ring. And it's just obviously not what is happening, or what they believe in their true inner self, or what their inner self should be. It's kind of a strange deal. And there's also these ideas of old kind of things, collecting junk and garbage dumps and all these kind of things. And there's some like really depressing moments where the character is obviously dressed up as a female, and they're drunk at this party, or this small apartment party, or what's going on, and they keep trying to force themselves on other people, and they're just kind of being pushed away. And it's just kind of really depressing, because obviously this character is saying these things, maybe these different things, and then you're seeing the reality of it. But then sometimes you'll see like almost like this character, their inner self, kind of carrying that person on their back, and it's just symbolic. It's interesting. It is interesting. It's visually it's unique and weird, and it's not as disturbing. It's not really a disturbing film like the last one. I would say A Hole in the Heart was disturbing. Just the stuff that they showed, and the imagery, and some of the monologues and stuff were just obviously personal in the film to the characters, and a little upsetting, to be honest. And this one is depressing and sad and kind of bleak in a lot of ways, but I think that it's probably ahead of its time. This is 2006, so when you look at movies like in 2006 were they really addressing that stuff, think of it this way. Hostel came out in 2005 or a year later, year. It was kind of released 2006, the same year, and how they kind of handle certain things. Not that movie, not that was Eli Roth's intention to be negative in that kind of way, but you're just saying like the way they handle certain, touchy subjects and stuff like that is completely different, So this director obviously had a little bit more finesse or understanding, or at least was willing to put it in his films. So like I said, it's interesting, it's different, and this isn't for everybody. I am reminded of a joke my friend made. He does not like art films. He does not like any of these kind of films that are art and avant-garde. And he said, I'm not watching this artsy crap one time. It's essentially, you're going to put it in, it's going to be a black and white movie where a guy is sorting M&Ms by color in black and white. And I just thought it was so funny, obviously, because it's so on the nose, but it's obviously a point he's trying to make. But just making fun of these kind of art films. But I wouldn't necessarily call it this. And I do enjoy art films. But yeah, this one is just, it is very artsy and very experimental and just not for everybody. It's not approachable for everybody either. You know what I mean? Not every movie is for everybody, but at least take an interest in film if you like this director. Give it a look. So, I do believe there's some special features on here. So we have here we go. New interviews with Lukas Moodysson on both films, moderated by film programmer Sarah Lutton. Lukas Moodysson, a masterclass, an interview with director, filmed at London National Film and Television School in 2004. Hole in My Second Heart, a behind-the-scenes featurette from 2004. Inside the Container Crypt, 2007 featurette in the themes of container. Theatrical trailers, image galleries for both films. So if you like this one, or you're interested in this box set, this is a pretty interesting movie. There's only 2 more to go, and I'm enjoying it. And they're interesting, and I'm learning. I'm learning stuff, guys. But yeah, check it out. Okay, here we go. I'd heard a lot about this one. My friend Christian Michelson, I believe is how you say his name. I can't think of the podcast. I'll put a link below. But he does this podcast of, kind of extreme films and talks about a lot of different films. And he interviewed the writer, producer, star of this film, Vincent, what is it? I don't want to make sure I say his name right. I don't want to mess it up. Vincent LaRusso. And this is a 1995 movie, Streets of Darkness. So this is strange. Now, this is a bizarre one here because this is 2 films on here, Just a Chance from 1993 or 92 and Streets of Darkness from 1995. This is released by SRS. They had a limited Blu-ray run. Now the DVD's coming out. So here's what I find charming and different about this film, right? It's an SOV film. So you immediately think low-budget horror film, kind of gore film, experimental film, or maybe like a transgressive kind of horror cinema or something like that, or just direct-to-video market, dirt cheap or German splatter. You think that's the idea you have for SOV, right? No, this is different. This is a strange one. So Just a Chance, like I said, was a 1992 movie. It was a morality tale written by LaRusso, and he got Bill Grafé to direct it. Bill Grafé did tons of movies, including Impulse and Mako Jaws of Death, and he's just done a lot of films, a lot of cool films too. Whiskey Mountain, I believe, is a Grafé film, or is that Rebane? I always mix up these two, but I believe he did do Whiskey Mountain, which is cool, with Christopher George in it. So, am I mixing that up? Anyways, here we go. So basically, this film is about 30 minutes long, and it follows the story of LaRusso, who has a friend, and it's based on a true story according to the writer and everything like that. And it follows him in here, and he has a friend, and he starts to get involved with the drug scene and all this kind of stuff, and he has, basically carries out some revenge, and he ends up, in jail. It's very kind of like realistic in a lot of ways, and kind of minimal, but still effective. It's a low-budget SOV movie, but it has different kind of subjects, more of a morality tale. And if you listen to him in the special features and everything, and on that podcast, he talks about getting this put on like the Christian television network, which is a pretty big get. He got it put in Blockbuster, so it's kind of also a look into how different the times were in the early 90s when it came to video distro, independent video distro. And he's friends with Tim Ritter as well, and Tim Ritter helped get this SRS DVD and Blu-ray rolling. So like Tim Ritter also has probably a lot to say about that. He used to drive to video stores and talk to the owners and get his tapes in there. But this guy got it put in Blockbuster, and that's pretty interesting stuff. So though I will say that Streets of Darkness is kind of the bigger film, of course. It's like a feature length, 90 minutes or something along those lines. It has a really big cast, and what I like about it is, although it is low budget, it's an SOV, right? That is not a horror film, which is interesting. It's very regional. It's Miami, Florida. It definitely reflects the time it was made, with the characters and the backgrounds and all the locations. So there's that. It has the regional quality. And you usually think, the Florida films are a lot. Grafé made a lot of movies in Florida. Tim Ritter made movies in Florida. And then you have other stuff like exploitation. You have, a couple Ken Wiederhorn movies in Florida. So you have like a big mixture of films made in Florida. So then, on top of that, like I said, it is a morality tale. This one is more, actioned up, more sex, more violence, more crime element, kind of like, a lower rent, like budgeted Martin Scorsese kind of style deal. And then on top of that, it does seem almost not to be an insult, but like a vanity project, like a character, like a Sling Blade or something. Not as a caliber of Sling Blade. Obviously, Sling Blade was like such a big, huge hit. Somebody who writes something for themselves and like has something to say, has some personal things in there, and wants to get their message out, wants to give themselves a chance to be out there and show that what they're capable of, right? Though this one is positive because in a lot of ways, LaRusso is actually in good shape. A lot of these times you'll see these movies where somebody makes themselves a star and it's 10 years too late and they're just got like this big beer gut and they're like acting like they're real ripped and muscular and and then like, what is going on? Like LaRusso's in good shape. He's a strong looking guy. He looks the part. So basically he is this kind of guy. It's a sequel to Just a Chance, and he was in prison in that film at the end. He's getting released here, and he basically has a character in this, what is it? I believe Colombian or Cuban drug lord or something like that. I don't remember, or they Mexicans. I can't remember exactly the details here, but he has trouble with them because, they do stuff to his mom. They cause problems. They're also causing problems with, the Italian mob. But this mob family here owes him some favors because of who he actually killed. So he starts to get involved with, a girl who's one of these kind of higher ups, side thing, and then he starts to date one of the mob boss's daughters. So it kind of creates this whole crazy like turmoil within there. So there's a lot of him, collecting money, getting in fights, being a badass and stuff like that. But there's a lot of these kind of crazy offbeat, like kind of mobster characters. And it does feel like kind of like a low budget Martin Scorsese movie in Miami with, not all the acting is top caliber, but some of it's pretty solid. A lot of like really over the top kind of Italian kind of style characters, which I enjoy, right? But it does have that SOV regional quality at the same time. So it makes it kind of unique in the way that you really don't see, these kind of personal, regional, weird kind of stories like this as a crime story. I mean, there's low budget crime movies like Laws of Gravity and stuff, but even that was higher budgeted, that was probably shot on film and everything, and just had probably more name recognition and stuff. Had like Peter Green in it and some other people, but you're thinking super dirt cheap SOV movies, and I had never heard of this film. It's not like a movie that I knew existed, so it was also interesting in that way, and like I wonder if it's anything like what is that one from the UK that made the video Section 3 NAS, bodily grievous harm or grievous GBH. I've never seen that, but just hearing about that sounds kind of familiar, but I think that's a little bit more gory than this. But anyways, it is kind of a charming story, and it's got a good story to it too. Like behind the scenes is what I'm saying. Like behind the scenes, it's a very interesting story. It's a pretty decent story too. It's a typical kind of mob story, and it ends kind of in a way, I don't want to spoil it because rip it off, but not a rip off. I would spoil it, but it's similar. It's not a rip off. It's similar to another kind of mob movie that ends that way, made a couple years before, which I'm a big fan of. But no, I was happy with this one, and the girls on the cover are not actually in the movie. But yeah. Anyways, there is plenty of nudity in this one, and like there's a lot of Miami beach bodies running around here, so I think that will get people's attention. And there's one character in here who's this kind of character who's like, he's got this real raspy voice, this Italian guy. He's a ridiculous character. He's entertaining though. But yeah. There's a lot of narration, and it does have kind of a bizarre feel to it. You know what I mean? Like, because it's so personal and regional and different than a lot of the other stuff that people are like, what is this? They might find like there's a sense of like comedy to it, but not purposely done. And I don't mean that as an insult, just because, and I don't really find the comedy in it either for the most part. You know what I mean? I'm not laughing at the movie, but it is different. It's unique in that kind of way. You know what I mean? Like, so and like some of the side characters are over the top. Like they're like the Mexican drug dealer. He's completely over the top. He's almost like he's like Tomas Milan, like as if like one of those characters from those like Polizia Tetsi movies, but just even more ridiculous. So like if Tomas Milan was in it playing that character, you'd buy it. So let's just put it that way. But Streets of Darkness has a bunch of features on here too. You got the prequel, like I said, Just a Chance, directed by Bill Grafé. You got commentary tracks, you got interviews, and it's a long interview. And Tim Ritter's involved with that interview too. It's like 45 minutes long. So if you're fans of Streets of Darkness, or you never heard of it, or you're an SOV enthusiast or a low budget crime enthusiast, then give it a look. I mean, like, is it like being a masterpiece? Like, is it a Scorsese or something? No, of course not. It's not a lost Martin Scorsese film, but it is different. It's a nice look at, SOV movies that aren't, the typical SOV movies. So check it out. Okay, now we're going to hop into those 1981 movies.
Woe be unto him who opens one of the 7 gateways to hell, because through that gateway, evil will invade the world.
Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. In this little town, when the 14th comes round, there's a silence and fear in the air. Remember the morn that the legend was born, all the shock and the horror was there. Oh, the legend, they say, on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago.
All right, first up is a slasher, of course. It's 1981 after all, and this is Graduation Day with the wonderful Christopher George. Linnea Quigley is also in here. Is there anybody else I'm forgetting in here when it comes to actors and actresses? It's directed by Herb Fried, who I believe did a couple more movies. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Graduation Day. So I saw this years ago. It was distributed by Troma originally, from Troma, of course. And, I'd watch the DVD, and then, Vinegar Syndrome put it out on Blu-ray. I was like, I'm going to upgrade Graduation Day, and I've not watched it since. I bought it right when it came out, so here we go. All right. So kind of a a kind of a slasher, pretty typical, I mean, but it's 1981, so I guess it's not as typical as what we've learned, even though it does feel like a lot of the slashers around this time. It has the most similarities to Fatal Games, which I believe is 84. So what we have here is a group of high school kids that are on the track team. They're on the kind of Olympics gymnastics team. Christopher George is their coach. Love Christopher George. He's in stuff like City of the Living Dead, Grizzly, Whiskey Mountain. Just a great actor, Exterminator. So just a really good actor in a bunch of movies. He's got a great demeanor to him, kind of a grouchy voice. He's the coach. And one day during a very competitive race, he's screaming at his player, this girl, to make the run. You got to beat 30 seconds. And she makes it, but she dies right on the field and everything. She has a blood clot. The coach is disbarred from coaching. He's kind of washed up. He's still teaching woodshop, as the coach should teach at school, right? Reminds me of Student Bodies, which is funny, which is from 81 as well, where you have the woodshop teacher. We're going to make Horsehead bookends. And, of course, Christopher George would be making the woodshop teacher. He would be him. Okay, so basically that's what happens. At the same time, because this girl died, her sister is coming out of the military and coming back and everything like that. And she had a boyfriend and all these other people on the track team and the gymnastics team, whatever the hell the team is. It's a blanket kind of team. There's like 5 or 6. There's like maybe about 10 in this team. So fairly quickly they start to get picked off, even down to the piece of the pitcher getting crossed off in a red X, right? Until we only have a couple people left, and we're like, who is the killer? Is it the coach? Is it the boyfriend? Is it the sister? Is it the drunken stepfather who's absolutely over the top? Is it the mother? So you got a lot of red herrings, and they even throw it a different way where you think it's somebody else, and at the very end, it's not quite. Oh, they kind of try to trick you and everything like that. But yeah, and it ends, and it has kind of a psycho kind of reveal here a little bit. Of course, can you not have a psycho? There's always going to be a psycho reveal in 50% horror films. But yeah, the kills are decent. There's some gory kills in here. Nothing that will knock your socks off. We're not seeing Savini style effects or the peak Savini style effects we would see from the year before and this year, like in The Prowler and Maniac and stuff like that, and even Eyes of a Stranger. So, but the effects are fine. They work. I believe there's a severed head if I'm not mistaken. They're pretty gory, enjoyable, and Linnea Quigley is in here. Of course, there's some nudity, there's some sex. This is a really solid, really, I don't want to be rude, but it's a run-of-the-mill average slasher film from the time. I enjoy it, due probably to Christopher George screaming at kids. There's a great part where there's a photographer that shows up, and she's doing all these gymnastics, and he's like, and the photographer's like, yeah, just kind of take it easy on yourself, and Christopher George's like, no, you do the whole thing, and he's just like freaking out, and it's pretty great. Yeah, this one's entertaining. I like it. And I remember the killer. I saw this years ago whenever the DVD was put out, probably in like 1999, and I still remember the killer verbatim. I remember just having that feeling, and then when I watched it, and I 100% remember the killer, and I never remember the killer in a lot of these movies. There's sometimes I'll watch a slasher movie 5 years ago, I'll pop it in from the 80s, and I'm like, I've never seen this one, and I was like, wait, I already seen this movie, and I'll take 20 minutes into it. Graduation Day for me, for some reason, is memorable. Maybe because it's in the heyday, maybe because I saw it when I was 12 or 13 years old, but hey, it's Graduation Day. It looks good and sounds good. There's a couple special features on here. How could there not be? New 4K restoration. Are we going to get a 4K upgrade? Video interviews with lead actress Patch McKenzie, director Herb Freed, producer David Brow, and editor Martin J. Sandoff. Commentary track with David Brown. Good commentary track with Hysteria Continues, which I enjoy. But here, there is a funny... Patch McKenzie talks about, how she's done a bunch of movies, but people come up to her and want her to sign stuff for Graduation Day. That's the one thing. People love their horror movies. Like, I obviously speaking from, experience, but people adore their horror films, right? So that seems to last forever. So if you're an actor or actress out there, get yourself a couple horror films when you're young, and the autograph world will be open to you forever, it seems. Okay, the next one is The House Where Death Lives, aka Delusion. And I think this was a TV film. It sure as hell feels like a TV film. Don't know too much about this one, to be brutally honest. So I put this one in, and it's relatively kind of just very standard stuff here. So there's some narration, and this girl is writing her, I believe her father, telling her, mother was very sick. She finally died. I think you should know, yada, yada, yada. And then she proceeds to get this job working for, Joseph Cotton of all people, and he's really good in this. I love Joseph Cotton in this film, from stuff like Barren Blood and the previous year's The Hearst. And he's in a million movies. He's a classic actor. So essentially, and he's in the Umberto Lenzi movie as the kind of crippled, wheelchair bound, blind kind of character. It's funny because he's in a wheelchair in this one. So I wonder if he was having health problems around this time. Not sure. So essentially, she gets this job taking care of him as a housekeeper, kind of a live-in nurse. And there's a bunch of other people that there's like a butler and a cook and all these kind of eccentric people there. Soon she finds out that his strange son is there. And he's not, I guess you'd say strange. He's mentally ill and he causes a lot of problems. And there seems to be other mentally ill people there as well. They bring in kind of the young kid, his grandson that moves in, and he's way older. And there starts to be kind of this strange kind of friction relationship between the nurse and the grandson, who doesn't really look like a grandson, who's really sheltered and doesn't know what a skateboard is. All sorts of weird things here. And sooner or later, people end up dying. Somebody who's loves to jump into the wine cellar, gets the wine cellar pushed on them, all these kind of things, and people end up dying. The bad thing about it is the night scenes are pretty dark, so sometimes you're like, was that a character? Which character was that? Why is he dead? And I literally caught myself being like, which character was it? I lost it. I couldn't tell who died right there. Stuff like that, but the reveal is pretty bonkers, pretty entertaining. It's got actually Joseph Cotton trying to pull a fast one coming out of a closet with a cane. I don't want to spoil too much, but that part I actually thought was great. Yeah, it's an interesting, weird film, and it actually has some similarities to the Sai and Sano film, believe it or not. What is that one called? The Strange Circus. It has similarities to A Strange Circus in plot and remembrance and stuff, and I kind of dug that. The reveal is actually good stuff. So this is Delusion, which is a good title, or The House Where Death Lives. I prefer Delusion, to be honest. I think it's just a more, title that reflects the film a little bit more, but check it out. It's probably on YouTube. It's decent stuff. Okay. And the last one that I'm talking about from 1981 is Tracking, aka Ghost Soldier. Now in Letterboxd, they list this as 1987, which I'm not sure which one is at the tape or was made in 81. I don't know is in that movie database wrong. Regardless, I'm covering it. This is a French film. This is by the same director who made Revenge of the Living Dead Girls, which is from 86. If you guys have not seen Revenge of the Living Dead Girls, do yourself a favor, get a couple drinks and watch it. It is weird, it is bonkers, it is silly, and make sure to watch the alternative endings if you can. It is a weird, bizarre film about girls being killed by toxic milk or some shit. I can't remember, but it's weird. And Tracking is also really bizarre. Now, this one reminded me of the film that came out a few years ago called Braid. Remember that, where the three girls are in the house and it's not all as it seems? So what we have here is three girls that are kind of left alone, and there's supposed to be a woman, like an aunt, who comes in and checks on them from now and then, and the father would call and everything like that. But what happens is one of them, they start to tell a story about how one of their fathers years ago during the war raped this woman with a wine bottle, and then it kind of reenacts it. They kind of reenact it, and for some strange reason or whatever, it kind of brings the ghost there, or they kind of bring the ghost to life. Whatever it is, amalgamation of their thoughts, or they're carrying it out, or the ghost was there the whole time. Whatever it is bizarre and strange, and imagination run wild turned real shit. So this ghost soldier starts to kind of rape them, molest them, grab their breast, whatever, and they can't escape it no matter what. And it even gets to the point where they start to, kind of tie their delusions, if they are that. They could be, there's some realness to them. It's strange. And you could probably dive into this if like a Cat Allinger or somebody was like to dissect this movie. It'd be pretty interesting, to be honest. But so there's all these kind of elements in there that are super weird. And it does this thing like almost towards the end of the film where it's like 3 months later and you're like, what are we doing here? This is weird. And like it leaves this kind of narration at the very end, like this kind of like little, bookend where it's like, not bookend, maybe it's a bookend, but it's just like, we don't know what happened. And it like kind of adds a layer to it. And I don't know. It's just a bizarre film. It has a lot of nudity. It has a lot of weird, unpleasant things with it, of course. There's a lot of, non-consensual shit going on with a ghost. Entity was the year after or something like that, 2 years after. So, like, I mean, ghost rapists are I guess, kind of, I don't want to say a staple in the genre because they're not, but there's a ghost in this one, and it's strange. It's almost like their story or their delusions or the guilt of the father, whatever created or brought this ghost to fruition. It's a strange film. It's a bizarre film. Like I said, all the people in it are good looking, so there's that. And not all the nudity is rape stuff, but it is Ghost Soldier, aka Tracking. Weird film for sure. Like I said, it has a kind of same flavor as something like Braid. Okay, next up is the Patreon pick, and I think this was a Jim Simon, and this is One Good Cop and this stars Michael Keaton, Anthony LaPelgi. Who's else is in here? I know I'm gonna miss somebody. Oh, it's got frickin' Kevin Conway and Rachel Tic Tac or whatever her name is. I don't want to forget Renee Russo. Jeez, I can't. Rachel Ticotin, who's in tons of stuff. Benjamin Bratt's in here. Yeah, so this movie I'd never seen. Maybe I saw part of it on television. This is 1991, if I'm not mistaken. I really like Michael Keaton. I've loved Michael Keaton ever since I was a little kid and saw Batman and Beetlejuice and Dream Team, all that kind of stuff. Michael Keaton, always enjoyed him. Always a good actor, always solid, never disappointed me. So, essentially, One Good Cop follows the story of Michael Keaton and Anthony LaPelgi. How do you say his name? LaPelgia? I can't remember how you say his name. But they're these partners. They're overworked. They're exhausted. Kevin Conway's their lieutenant. And Anthony is going through some real troublesome stuff. His wife died. He's depressed. He's got 3 kids to take care of. He's never getting enough sleep. So we see them on the beat a while. We see him getting a lot of fights. You see there's this new drug on the street, ice or something. It's causing everybody to go crazy. It's like hyped up crystal meth, right? So one day they get called in and they say this is completely volunteer. You don't have to do it, but there's a hostage situation here, and the guy asked for you guys because he knows you. You booked him once. So during this whole routine situation here, the trailer spoils all this, but this is like 20 minutes in. Renee Russo is Michael Keaton's wife. She can't have kids. But what happens is poor Anthony gets killed here. He gets shot in the head trying to stop it. He kind of loses his cool, maybe lack of sleep, stress, whatever it is. He dies. Michael Keaton is clearly heartbroken, clearly destroyed, distraught, and he wants to get back at the guy who's the drug pusher in the neighborhood, who's this billionaire kind of South American kind of guy. But he basically essentially starts to take care of the kids because he's in charge of it in the will. His wife obviously gets attached, and he's looking at ways to kind of keep these kids. It's going to cost a lot of money. And he has access to possibly get a lot of money if he brings down a drug dealer. So that's kind of what the plot is here. There's a weird scene towards the end of the film with like 20 minutes to go where a character is pretty much introduced and they don't really hint at it, I don't think well at least, that this character is who they end up being. And you're just like, what is this just like a weird, like I was wrote in the corner so I did this? I don't know. It's very strange, very bizarre. It ends how you want it to end. Like, you really want it to end. You need it to end the way it ends, and it does, because you really like Michael Keaton, so without spoiling too much. But the bad guys are solid. The main bad guy's really, really good. But Kevin Conway steals the show. From Funhouse and Oz. He plays the O'Reilly's father in Oz. Kevin Conway steals the show in this one. He's really good. He's kind of a mean exterior kind of lieutenant, but at the very end, he has some really good moments. He has some really good, a really good monologue and speech and everything like that I thought was top notch. I mean, Michael Keaton's always good, always likable. Everybody's solid in here. Renee Russo is good as well, but really the person who steals the show is Kevin Conway. As far as the special features are concerned, we have an audio commentary by director Heywood Gould, moderated by filmmaker Heather Buckley, very cool, surround sound, and normal 2.1. It's about 2 hours long, but it's good, entertaining. I don't think most people will complain about this one. 90s. How can you complain about Michael Keaton as a cop? You gotta like it. I mean, he's Cop and Jackie Brown. He's really great in that as well. So yeah, check it out. Good stuff. All right, let's get in these questions, comments, concerns, all that good stuff. Ilk Vomit. Where's Jeremy though? I'm working on it. MJ. Project Wolf Hunting was my #1 horror film from last year that I've seen so far. Hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I'm sure I will. Uzi Suicide 666. Worst of 1981? That's a question I asked last week. X-Ray, Hospital Massacre, or Student Bodies? Talk about your pieces of crap. Watch your nose and make you sterile. I've seen them both. I don't remember hating either of them. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'll hate it now. Hudson, worst movie of 81. I have a bad feeling about this, but it's Galaxy of Terror. Awesome poster. Shame about the movie. No, it's got its fans, but I'm not one of them. Zombie Lake was bad, but at least it was funny. Funny bad. I don't know, man. I like Galaxy of Terror, but I do think like the last 15 minutes, you're like, what is this? What the hell is this? Zombie Lake, I remember being a kid. And I have a story about Zombie Lake. I'll tell it when I cover it. But I mean, that movie was rough when I was a kid. But movie junkie reviews. I should probably watch Shockwaves again. Been a year or two. Travis Linscomb. Damn it, I forgot to send my 81 list. I'll see how mine lines up with the ones you read off. Ken Coakley. I got the Martial Law 1 and 2. I prefer Martial Law 2 because that is the movie that got me into Jeff Wincott from Prom Night. One Jeff Wincott movie that I strongly recommend is Mission of Justice. Bridget Nielsen was the villain in that one. Jeff Wincott brothers Michael Wincott from The Curtains and the Crow. Oh, of course. And Dead Man. Chad McQueen is the son of Steve McQueen. I know I mentioned that, but yes, he is. Just a few years before Martial Law, he played a high school bully in The Karate Kid. I feel Like I said, he never looked like a kid. I haven't watched The Karate Kid in 25 years. Lastly, the professor whose name you forgot was Professor Toru Tanaka. That's right. He was a professional wrestler in the 60s and 70s and was tag team partners with Mr. Fuji. Holy shit, man. I loved Mr. Fuji. Well, he was a great villain, I'll say that much. Nick Mua. I probably hated him when I was a kid, but he's a very good villain. Nick Mua. Worst film of 1981, a difficult choice. The 80s were excellent. Vis a Vis movies. Still, I'm going to go with Omen 3, The Final Conflict. As good as Sam Neill is in it, I can't get myself to rewatch it very often. The tone is of the killings are unintentionally funny. Eaten by Jack Russell dogs. Yikes. I'm curious to hear the other picks. That's funny. I've never actually watched Omen 3 for some reason. I've seen 1 and 2, but not 3. And I've seen the remake for some reason, but I've never seen 3 or 4. Questions. The Omen films are notorious for being cursed films. Do you think there's any truth to these claims, or is it all marketing? I doubt it's marketing. I mean, could it be coincidence? I'm not sure. I'm really not 100% sure. I don't know the story very well on the Omen cursed films. I know Poltergeist is considered a cursed film, Exorcist, all those kind of things. Would you ever work on a movie that might be cursed? It depends how it was cursed. Depends if I believed in it. Depends what happened. You know, if 6 people got murdered on the set, no, I'm not working on that. Do you like Larry Fessenden's films? I'm curious about his new werewolf film, Blackout. I'm curious about his werewolf film as well, because he kind of does, like, he does Frankenstein, he does a vampire, he does the classic kind of stuff. I like Beneath. I like The Last Winter. I've not seen Habit, which is supposed to be his most popular. I mixed on No Telling. I absolutely hate Depraved. I think Depraved's terrible. So I'm like mixed. I think Larry Fessenden as an actor is phenomenal. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great presence, and I love him every time he pops up. Till next week, hopefully we're getting some more homework. Okay. My tube. I put Frankenstein's Island as my least favorite of 81. I'll put it here again for reference. It looks like a movie that is meant to be tongue-in-cheek funny. It is acted straight. All the writing is straight. The effects also look intentionally funny, but it's just never funny. Although Cameron Mitchell, wow. You get John Carradine as well, but there are literally women in leopard print bikinis and throwback set designs. For me, the tone just missed its mark. This is my lowest out of 61 1981 movies so far. Appreciate the enthusiasm and consistent hard work. Thank you. 61. Man, I had that with Mama Dracula from 1980. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's not funny. It's not clever. It's really terrible. It's really broad and stupid and never works ever anywhere. And that was the worst for me for 1980. Smudge, dang, didn't see that you were doing a top 10 vote for 1981. Why are you diving into 81, by the way? Because I'm just going to go through the whole 80s for myself. Tony Johansson, probably Don't Go in the Woods. John Soloway is not happy. You take that back. And he replies, I haven't seen it, but heard it starts off extremely strong, then goes downhill after that. Maybe not answer if you haven't seen it. So JP Andrika, I know it's not good, but I'm a sucker for backwoods slashers. Yeah, and John Soloway. Oh yeah, it's bloody terrible, but a hell of Living Dead kind of way. Yeah, for sure. Jonathan Edward Smith, Don't Go in the Woods Alone, Home Sweet Home, and The Survivor. Home Sweet Home is rough. He says, bummer listing that since I had really high hopes for it, but everything it did was done better by Soul Survivor and some other ones. Started strong, but got pretty dull with the quickness. Rebecca Reinhard, Omen 3 was pretty needless. Sorry, but despite its many flaws, I love Don't Go in the Woods Alone. Jeremy R., anything by Jojo Van Buren, which you never heard of him. That's an inside joke. A shout out to Brutal Massacre, a comedy. Jeff Keith, No Such Thing. I like the way you think, Jeff. Jarrett Vossler, Ronald Reagan. I kid. Okay. Stephen McGirvin, Oasis of the Zombies. Is Oasis of Zombies 81 too? I don't want to watch Oasis of Zombies and Zombie Lake. I swear they're trying to kill me. John Soloway, Porno Holocaust. Watched Erotic Nights of the Living Dead last year, so I meant for last year. So why not Porno Holocaust? Long live Jody Amato. Sean Bruckner, this one grossed me out big time. Yeah, and John says, haha, I don't like to mix my horn and porn. Scott W. Davis, Home Sweet Home is really bad. You don't like Body by Jake, guys? Matthew Head, Night of the Zombies. That's not Hell of the Living Dead. That's the Joel M. Reed one. Jeff Pinnell, Full Moon High or Piranha 2. Matthew Ball, Piranha 2, The Spawning. Cody C.K. Kitts, Home Sweet Home. Zach Showalter, whatever footage there may be of me being born. Okay. Cameron Scott, Omen 3 is pretty bad. Chase Vaughn, I've never heard a good thing about Porno Holocaust. Eric Spuddick, might have to go with Final Exam. I mean, I'm a slasher enthusiast, so I still revisit it every 5 years or so. Just not the best movie, though. Yeah, I remember Final Exam, watching it. I don't remember it, though. Jonathan Edward Smith, Eric Spudnick, I would have included that one if not for the last 30 minutes working overtime to make up for the rather dull first 60. It's grown on me over time. JP Andrika, it has a creepy vibe and a lot of character development. The director purposely didn't focus on the gore, which is odd. Why make it a slasher if you don't like them? Anderson David, You Broke My Heart. I love that film. It's in my top 5 slasher films. There are some fun aspects to it. I just think the fact that we never know who the killer is, and that enraged me upon the first viewing, and I just liked it since. I did kind of enjoy the novelization. Maybe the film is due for a revisit. I'm due for a revisit. It's getting a 4K release from Dark Force, of course. Ben Wasden, I know a lot of people liked it. For me, it's Road Games because I thought it was boring. Mary Lily, sorry. Maybe not the worst film, but I found the nesting so very, very bland. Lisa Marie Cart, Cannibal Ferox. I also don't really care for Cannibal Holocaust either. I asked her the animal violence. Bill Rodriguez is, I can get Ferox, but Holocaust, crazy talk. She says overhyped in my opinion. Sorry. So like, I understand. Like, I'm Cannibal Holocaust is one of my all-time favorite movies. I like Cannibal Ferox a lot, but those movies ain't for everybody. Let's be honest. Acting shocked that somebody doesn't like Cannibal Holocaust is kind of like, it's just, you could see. Mark Humphreys, I know I'm the minority, but never been a fan of American Werewolf in London. Rebecca Reinhard rightfully says, but is it the worst movie of the year? Come on. No shit, right? Not to be a dick, but come on. You've seen more bad movies than that. Kari Sonnenfeld, I think Graduation Day sucks. Hey, I just talked about that. Taylor Hyder, terrible movie. Scream 1981. Jared Batchelor, I think Back to School, but I love it. I don't think Back to School's not a horror movie. Even though Burt Young's looking pretty scary in that one. Brock Bones, The Omen 3, they should have stopped after 2. I agree with Don't Go in the Woods Alone being probably the worst made, but I still love that movie. It's pure nostalgia, though. Rebecca Reinhardt, right? It's obviously bad, but it has its charm. Oh, and Brock Bones, oh yeah, it's dripping with it. Just the killer's performance and costume design makes it worth it. Sean Lynch, Night of Horror. Actually, the worst movie I've ever seen. It's like, I've heard it's really bad. And he says, I've seen it twice, not by choice, mind you. Yeah, I've heard Night of Horror is unwatchable. JP watched it from 22 Shots, and he's like, oh my God, so bad. And then John Noonan, My Birth. Okay, guys, you know what? I'm not going to hop into the update with a special cut, because we only have 3 titles here. It'll be rather quick. First up is going to be Heat. I just saw Heat. Remember the old Jim Gaffigan joke? Now I'm apparently 47, making jokes, and old PG jokes from other comedians. Other comedians like I'm one. But anyways, Heat. Yeah, everybody's seen Heat by Michael Mann. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, R.I.P. Everybody's in this movie. Good film. Been years. Looking forward to watching it in 4K. Then we have Christmas, Bloody Christmas from Joe Bigos. I love this movie. It's really fun. Good stuff. Not as good as Bliss or VFW, but it's really entertaining. And then here's a cool one. I imported it from Germany. Diabolic had it. And this is Confessions of a Serial Killer from 1985, starring Robert Burns, the production designer from Texas Chainsaw, as Henry Lee Lucas. Now, this movie's really underrated, and I believe it is the uncut version finally. 106 minutes, because there's been an HD print floating around that you can watch. It's been on the sites, everything where you up. And I was always liked this movie, and it's the uncut version. And I have the old VHS that I used to watch. It was uncut. So I'm like, holy shit, is this actually the uncut Blu-ray? And I'm pretty sure it is, because you got to be careful with German imports, whatever. Even if they say 18, they might be cut. But anyways, finally, I can watch this in Blu-ray. It made my top 25 of 1985. It would have made my top 10, but it's a very strong year. This is a great film. This makes a great piece with Henry. If you watch both of them, you can kind of get a glimpse at, this one's more true to the actual story, but both are really great films. So this is Confessions of a Serial Killer. Yeah. Obviously, look at the cover. They're trying to, in the time when it was released on VHS, I believe it was closer to the Silence of the Lambs Day, so they put this on there. Anyways, we're out of here, guys. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.